back in trainers, XehrFelrose here, bringing you some Pokemon GO Battle League content. Today's video, we're going to be doing the Lunala Master League PvP IV deep dive breakdown to see what stats are needed for Lunala in the Master League. In this video today, we're going to cover the Lunala against the Master League. How well does it do just in general against the Open Master League meta? And then we're going to break down each of its 3 IV ranges from about 12 to 14 to see how they compare to the 15, the max 100% IV, to see if there's any room for us to be able to thrift on any stats. And then we're going to go at the very end, we'll talk about the best minimum recommended IV spreads. These videos are designed to inform you of what relevant stat points or break points or bulk points that you'll be giving up by thrifting on these stats. I will always recommend, obviously, having the 15 of any IV if you can get it, but you just want to see what we're going to be looking to give up if we have to go lower than that. Attack, I will always recommend 15 in as well, because it's just being able to know that you're not going to lose mirror matches can sometimes be huge, especially with a Pokemon that's about to be as popular as Lunala will be. We're still going to look at all of the stats and see what's affected so that you can make an educated decision for yourself as to what stats you're okay with building based on what you give up with these stat points. Now, the truth is that most of the time, you may honestly not need to worry about some of these matchups. Sometimes it doesn't really matter if you give up a bulk point against Rhyperior, right? If you still win the matchup anyway, but it's still good to know this information. And you should always follow your gut if there's something that you just want to build regardless of the stats it has. And always keep in mind as well that we're going to get bottle caps even more in the future. So even if it's not a hundo today, it doesn't mean it couldn't be in the future. Some terms to know as we get into the math and the fun stuff here, just some stuff that is helpful to know what it means and why it is so important. Breakpoints are going to be a point in the attack stat that allows you to deal an additional damage in a given matchup. Bulk points are similar in that it's a defensive stat point that lets you take 1 less damage in a given matchup. Zeros, ones, twos, and any mixture of those 3 is going to basically denote shield situations like 0 to 1 shield, where you have 0 shields, they have 1. And the premium versus thrift IVs, if I bring up thrift IVs, it's basically the lowest possible point you can go with your stats before we're talking about like critical things being given up. And when we got the double Bs down there, the buddy boost equipped. Lunala into the Master League, generally speaking, it's got wins against Crown Form Zamazenta. It's got some good wins into Landorus, Necrozma, Dawn Wings. If it's, I think that one is reliant on it being a hundo though, if I'm not mistaken. You got good moves. You got good matchups into Melmetal, Palkia, and Dialga Origin. Kyogre's also on the list. You can also take out Florges and Solgaleo, and all of this is possible because Lunala now has Shadow Claw, which it did not have before. On the losses, though, there are definitely going to be a few that you just can't beat, even as a hundo. You got Yveltal and Zarude, basically dark types in general, because Lunala does double super effective damage taken from Ghost and from Dark as a Psychic and Ghost type. And so things that deal dark damage are going to generally have a positive matchup into Lunala. Zygarde's one of those things where if it has Crunch, and Necrozma Duskmane has the double super effective Shadow Claws, it can just shred through Lunala if it wants to. Zacian Crown on Metal Claw, though, is an interesting one, and I think that's just because you need 2 of those Shadow Balls to get the knockout, whereas the opponent just goes for basically 1 Behemoth Blade. You just bye. So Kyurem's Black and White, both are on the losses list, but they're kind of close, to be honest with you. And just the nice thing about Lunala in general and why it's so popular and why it's going to be so good in the Master League is because it's able to have that Ghost Fairy coverage, where if you remember many seasons ago when Skeledirge was a big deal, it's because it had the Ghost and Fairy coverage, which allowed it to have just such great neutral matchups into so many things. This is now what Lunala is going to excel at. It's going to have 2 very strong offensive coverages for the Master League and function as a really good safe switch. So, before we get into the actual stat points themselves, just want to highlight the things that happen when you equip a Best Buddy boost to Lunala. This is going to be a long list of things, but we have to break down and figure out, are these things really relevant? Because what I've done is I've removed a few of the nonsense, but basically taken the top 100 Pokemon in the Master League in a curated list and made sure that we had everything that might possibly be there for also those of you who play Show 6 Limited, Master League Metas, things like that. Kind of a little bit more expanded list than usual. Otherwise, I think this list should be kind of small. The mirror win you get against all non-Best Buddy Lunalas. You're also able to get the flip of Shadow Groudon from a loss to just a simul KO or a tie. You get to beat Solgaleo in the 1-2s and 2-2s. So if you have a shield, they have 2 shields, or they both have 2 shields. You're flipping 1-1 matchups, which is the 1 shield matchups against the opponent's Best Buddies. So you both have the Best Buddy equipped now. Zekrom, Dawn Wings Necrozma, and Hero Zamazenta. So that's the basic, got it at the mall Zamazenta, not the crown form with the big shield on his head. We're also flipping the 2-2 shields against best buddied Solgaleo, Dawn Wings Necrozma, and Skeletors. We're going to be picking up breakpoints with the increased attack stat against non-best buddied Shadow Metagross, Shadow Swampert, Jirachi, and Buzzwole, which, I mean, I'm not going to see a whole lot of the 3 or 4 of those, but maybe you will. I don't know. There's some crazy teams out in the Go Battle League these days, but you also get a breakpoint gained against Origin Giratina and Primarina, which I don't know why I put Waterfall in there. It was for a defensive breakpoint anyway. We're getting bulk points against non-best buddied Shadow Ho-Oh, Marshadow, and Xerneas. Against best buddied, we're going to be picking up bulk points, so you both have best buddy equipped against Crosby Dawnwing, Shadow Rhyperior, Rapid Strike Urshifu, which is the one that does the counter damage, which is already doing like 2 or 1 damage. And then you have Tapu Bulu, Giratina Origin, Kyogre, Shadow Sneasler. If y'all find a Shadow Sneasler, send me a Shoutcast or something. That'd be so fun. We're going to be picking up CMP ties now, though, against Solgaleo, Lunala, so the Mirror. Those two have the same attack stat, so that makes sense. Excadrill and Hydreigon are also going to be on that list. Non-best buddy CMP ties that we're winning. But the best buddy CMP tie against Urshifu, Hero Zamazenta, and Hero Zacian, the regular forms, the non-crowned versions. So if we've got Lunala without a best buddy equipped and the opponents are all non-best buddied in these comparisons with 14 attack, and I'm going to say this right up front, 15 attack is the best way to go here, and I would not consider building a Lunala with less than 15 attack. However, if for some reason you just don't have that option, here is what we are going to be giving up as a result. At 14 attack, we're going to be dropping CMP. That's charge move priority lost to Lunala, Solgaleo, and Excadrill. That makes sense because Lunala and Solgaleo have the same attack stats. So if you drop below that 15 attack, you're going to lose that CMP. The breakpoints that you're going to be losing doing 1 less damage per fast move in Shadow Claw to Giratina Origin and Primarina. You're going to be dropping the Mirror in the 0s, the 1-to-1s, and the 1-to-2s. You're going to also be dropping Zamazenta Hero form in the 1-to-1s and Solgaleo in the 1-to-2s. And you're going to be dropping the 2-to-2s shield matchup with Excadrill. We're dropping down to 13 attack. The list expands a bit here. We still lose CMPs to Lunala, Solgaleo, and Excadrill. In addition to that, we're getting Hero, Zacian, and Zamazenta on the menu here, as well as both forms of Urshifu. For breakpoints, we're doing 1 less fast move damage against Tapu Lele, as well as the hero forms of Zacian and Zamazenta. And we still have Giratina Origin and Primarina on the list. We're still dropping the same shielding scenarios here, exactly the same as the 14 attack. And then we drop down to 12 attack. The list is the exact same as the 13 attack list, so nothing new here. It's just a slightly lower attack stat when we equip the best buddy boost to the opponent. So let's say, how's your Lunala going to do against an opponent with the best buddy sticker slapped on in that CP boost? At 14 attack, your CMP ties are unaffected against the best buddy meta. Anything that would have already won CMP against you without now gets it with and keeps it. Breakpoints are going to be lost to Tapu Lele, Hero, Zacian, and Zamazenta, and we are dropping White Kyurem in the 0s. You'll be able to drop that Moonblast on the Kyurem in the 0s. Could be a nice scenario to keep, and so we're not going to see any other matchups in the 1s and 2s scenarios affected with 14 attack, and it's going to stay that way as well for 13 attack, where we're essentially just adding Garchomp onto the things we're losing a breakpoint to, as well as CMP ties lost to Volcanion, Gholdengo, and Genesect. At 12 attack, we'll see Heatran added to the list of CMP ties lost, and then we're going to also have Shadow Dragonite added to the list of breakpoints lost, and then we're also going to be losing the 2-to-2 shield matchup with regular Ho-Oh. So let's power up that Lunala with a best buddy boost. And here it is versus the non-best buddied meta. So this is if you're applying your Lunala compared to the best buddied Hundo Lunala. Your attack stat going down to 14 matters literally in no cases here against non-best buddied, because with the best buddy boost, you're gaining the CMP ties over the Mirror and Solgaleo and decisively keeping those matchups, and no other shielding scenarios at all get affected or any breakpoints or anything. But down at 13 attack, we're going to start adding Solgaleo, Lunala, and Excadrill back onto the list of CMPs lost, because you're now dropping underneath that attack that would be present at 15 attack with the non-best buddied Hundo. And the 0s, 1-to-1s, 1-to-2s, 2-to-1s, all lost in the Mirror. So you're basically just getting completely hosed on every Mirror situation here with Lunala, and Excadrill in the 2-to-2s is now a loss again. Dropping down to 12 attack, and again, like I said before, I know I keep saying it, but with the attack stat, we just try to keep a 15 attack one. It will be so much better. If you have to drop down as far as 12 attack, though, you're going to be chalking up losses in your CMP ties to the hero and to the hero Zacian and Zamazenta and Urshifu, as well as the Excadrill, Lunala, and Solgaleo. Breakpoints are going to be lost now to Shadow Shadow Metagross. Giratina Origin and Primarina, so those are coming back. We're still losing all pretty much shielding scenarios that we can possibly lose in the mirror. And on top of the 1-to-1s in Florges, 1-to-1s in Heroes on Magenta, and Solgaleo in the 1-2s. And Excadrill, still a 2-to-2 shields loss. Lunala with the best buddy equipped, with the opponents also having best buddy equipped. We're seeing a lot of the same things from the lists previously because the best buddy boosts just kind of keep leveling each other out. We're going to be losing CMV ties again. Solgaleo, Lunala, Excadrill, Giratina Origin, and Primarina are breakpoint losses, and you're losing everything you can possibly lose to this Lunala and Excadrill. Information doesn't really change much for the 13 attack, except White Kyurem now comes back onto the list of things that you're dropping in the zeros, and Zekrom also shows up in our list of 1 shield losses. 12 attack is again going to be identical to 13 attack with these best buddy parity situations. Defense. This 15 attack's a given. Everybody wants to build something with 15 attack, but where's the defense, Felrose? Where's the HP? Where can I thrift on my other stats that are supposed to matter less? I'm sorry. You're going to lose things, and you're going to have Lunala. I'm going to tell you, for those of you who are still watching without skipping to the end, thank you. Your Lunala ideally does need to be a hundo, so we'll break it down a little bit. There is some thrift ability, but defense is, you lose quite a bit. You're going to be losing at 14 defense with no best buddy boost equipped to Dawn Wings, Necrozma, bulk points, Shadow Rhyperior, Tapu Bulu, Giratina Origin, Kyogre, and Dawn Wings, Necrozma, and Shadow Rhyperior are probably 2 that are very important to keep, but no matchups are affected in the zeros, and the only thing that you're losing is Necrozma Dawn Wings, which is already kind of a not great matchup because you're both sitting there chunking each other with Shadow Claws that are double super effective, but typically the Lunala will just barely eke out that win with the bulk it has. 13 defense, we start to really add things to the list. So it's kind of a line drawn in the sand here because of how much more is now added as far as breakpoints. We're going to see Shadow Powders, we're going to see Mamoswine with Powder Snow and Shadow. All forms of Urshifu. Kyogre is also on the list. So those are more things now that are added. And if we get down, same matchups are still affected with 13 defense. Drop down to 12 defense. You are adding now a couple of matchups. So another line kind of drawn in the sand where like there's a significant jump in the things that you're giving up. So if you have to thrift on this stat, this is stuff to think about. What are you okay with giving up, right? So Therian Landorus in the zeros, Shadow Dragonite in the 1s at 12 defense are just losses that you gain in those matchups. You're also going to be taking on bulk point lost, so 1 extra fast move damage received from Skeleturge, the Dragon Breaths on normal Kyurem, Shadow Metagross, and we're still retaining all the same ones from before. So how does Lunala handle the best buddied opponents? Not as bad as you might think, actually. Defensively, I think it's mostly against the non-best buddied stuff that you're really going to find yourself wishing you had defense for. But you're losing a bulk point loss to Single Strike Urshifu, which is already a dark type, which is already going to shred Lunala anyway. Shadow Mamoswine, also bulk point loss. Not a very common thing that I'm expecting to see a whole lot of. Zeros and 2s are completely unaffected at 14 defense, and we do lose that 1-to-1 shield scenario against Florges. 13 defense, bulk points, you're going to still be losing them to that Urshifu, Mamoswine, Kyurem, Black and White, and Normal are all now getting a breakpoint against you with your defense at 13. And you're also seeing Skeleturge and Shadow Metagross show up on the list as well. Shielding scenarios that we're going to be giving up to zeros and... What is that? That's Lunala. So goofy, little girl. Did you just wake up? Zeros, we're going to be losing the Therian Landorus, straight zeros, and Kyurem, normal straight zeros. And we're also going to be picking up 1-to-1s losses against Florges and Dragonite. White Kyurem is also a 2-to-2 shield loss, so I would say it was already kind of bad getting down this low, but I think that like this kind of solidifies 14 as the defensive, like absolute low point that I'm willing to go, because I don't want to give up things like White Kyurem, Therian Landorus. Those are very like common meta matchups that I want to be able to make sure that I can have, but just in case you have to drop down to 12. You poor soul, I'm sorry. I understand your pain. Meloetta, Tapu Lele, and the Mirror Lunala matchup are now things that all do extra damage, 1 point per move against you. No matchups are affected in the zeros, but we're going to lose Florges still in the 1-to-1s and Dragonite in the 1-to-1s as well. And the 2s just straight up loses Lunala and Meloetta. When they actually win in the 2s versus Meloetta, being a normal type is kind of crazy. White Kyurem also still showing up on that list, unfortunately, in this trio of 2-to-2 shield losses. So if we best buddy the Lunala, how low can we go? There is against the non-best buddied meta, so 2/3 of your opponent's team at the worst. You're going to be having bulk points lost to Shadow Ho-Oh's Incinerate doing 1 more damage, Marshadow's Sucker Punches doing 1 more damage, and Xerneas's Geomancy's doing 1 more damage, and we are losing the Shadow Groudon matchup in the zeros again, and we're going to be doing that the whole way through, but no matchups are affected in the 1s or the 2s, and when we drop ourselves down to 13 defense, there are bulk points lost to Dawn Wings, Necrozma, Shadow Rhyperior. We're still losing those Shadow Ho-Oh, Xerneas, Paras, and Marshadow, but there's Tapu Bulu and Giratina Origin now also added to the list. So I think that again, I'm just solidifying here that 14 just feels like the not even functionally the best, but just the least I have to sacrifice for not getting lucky enough to get a stat at 15. Now going down to 12 defense, we're going to be adding even Urshifu, both forms, the Shadow Ho-Oh, Kyogre, and Shadow Mamoswine also now on the list of bulk points lost here at 12 defense. We're going to be still losing Shadow Groudon and also the 2-2s against Skeleturge and Solgaleo. If we best buddy the Lunala and the opponent has the best buddy boost with our defense, no matchups being affected at 14, but you're losing the bulk points to Dawnwings, Necrozma, Shadow Rhyperior, Tapu Bulu, Giratina Origin, and Kyogre, and that's kind of bad. We're dropping down to 13 defense, and we are going to see some matchups popping up. The Solgaleo and Skeleturge again in the 2-2s, which are interestingly put down in the 1-1s. I'm pretty sure that's a typo on my part. We're also losing the 2-1s and 2-2s versus Kyogre, also chucking on Shadow Mamoswine and Urshifu to the list of things that are now doing an extra fast move damage to us per fast move. 12 defense, the Shadow Metagross shows back up as well as the normal Kyurem on the list of bulk points lost. No matchups in the zeros are affected. And the Florges and Shadow Latios is a matchup that you now lose in the 1-1s. And you also still lose the 2-2s with Solgaleo and Skeleturge. So now we take the HP stat, the one that is normally the thrifty stat, and I'll agree with that. We're gonna have 234 HP at 100% IV, but if we're dropping down to 14, that is gonna go down to 233. So 14 HP is not a functional pseudo hundo. We're gonna be dropping no matchups in the 0s and 2s, but losing the Therian Landorus matchup at all is kind of critical if you are really trying to make sure that you get all the situations possible. Now, if you know you lose this scenario, you kind of have to avoid it, but it's one of those things where like if you have a shield advantage and you lose that matchup, it just feels bad. We get 232 HP when we drop down to 13 in the IVs. We have no matchups changed in the 0s and 2s, but the 1s we are now tacking on Shadow Dragonite to that list in the 1-1s. And down at 231 HP at 12 HP stat, we now have Therian Landorus in the straight 0 to shield matchup added to the list. And in the 1s, we're going to be taking losses to Altered Giratina with Shadow Claw, Shadow Sneak, Shadow Dragonite in the 1-1s. Therian Landorus is the 1-1s, and it goes from a win to a tie. So Therian Landorus popping up on here quite a bit. No matchups in the 2s, however, are affected without a best buddy against non-best buddy boosted opponents. Now, if the opponent has the best buddy boost equipped and you do not, this isn't too bad. 14 HP seems kind of thriftable. Loses that 1-1s against Shadow Dragonite, but nothing else gets affected that wouldn't have been already. At 13 HP, we're going to be taking that 0s loss to Therian Landorus, and we're going to be basically tacking on the Giratina Altered and Shadow Dragonite matchups that we saw against the non-best buddied opponents down at 12 HP, back up here at 13 HP. No matchups are affected, however, in the 2s, but at 12 HP, that list kind of gets a little bit bigger where we're losing the Crown Zacian matchup, which you win that matchup in the 0s. It's kind of important to keep it. Therian Landorus as well. And Volcanion in the 0s and 0-1s, which I'm not super worried about this, but it's still good to know in the event that you ever do see one, because they're going to be very rare in the Go Battle League. As far as the 1 shield matchups affected at 12 HP, Giratina Altered, Shadow Dragonite, and Therian Landorus now on this list as a 1-1s loss, with keeping those 1-0s and 1-1 situations against the other 2. And in the 2s, no other matchups are affected. So we best buddy this Lunala against the opponents not having a best buddy. We now lose the Shadow Groudon, which we would gain. So Shadow Groudon is a loss if you're not best buddied in the first place. Having 14 HP now narrowly loses you that matchup instead of a narrow victory. Don't know how many Shadow Groudons you're going to see, but just in case it's important to you. And the 2s is going to be a loss to Solgaleo in the straight 2-2s. It's going to be the same all the way throughout here, only adding a 1 shield loss to Shadow Latios at 12 HP. We apply best buddy boosts to everything. At 14 HP, we're going to have Shadow Latios showing up in the 1-1s losses, as well as Solgaleo and Skeleturge now duking it out, trying to get back on Lunala's bad side. And at 13 HP and 12 HP, everything is exactly the same, except now we're adding the Shadow Dragonite 1-1 shields loss on at 12 HP. So yes, now the moment you've all been waiting for. And if you are really needing to thrift, I'm sorry. You're not getting a premium spread on Lunala unless it's a hundo without the best buddy boost. I'm sorry to say that. This is definitely something that I would consider using bottle cap on at one point if we get another in the near future. Because Lunala being at a hundo, because it just has to give up so many meta relevant things in the Go Battle League, it needs to keep those 15 stats. But let's say you just got one of these other spreads, right? 15, 14, 13 is the absolute bare bottom minimum that we can go, in my opinion, without dropping everything else that's just makes it not worth having. Like if I'm giving up that much at lower stat points, to me, it's not worth the dust. Now, not to say if you don't care about the things that are on the list, they're not as important, and you just really want to play Lunala, play whatever stats you want. Honestly, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever, because you can always bottle cap this in the future, regardless of what you have. But aside from that, 14 defense is the minimum that we want to go if we're okay with giving up the 1-to-1s and Florges matchups, and a couple of bulk points that are somewhat relevant but not matchup flipping. And in the same kind of extreme vein, you can thrift down to 12 if you absolutely have to, because the bulk points that you lose don't really matter in the matchup's outcome outside of Dawn Wings Necrozma. 13 HP is the lowest possible thing you can go. Like we saw, we were drawing those lines in the sand. You really want 15 HP to be able to keep those Landorus and Solgaleo matchups, because they will be meta relevant matchups. But if you're okay with giving those up, then 13 HP is, I would say, the lowest you can go before you have to give up something like one of those two. Now, as far as the best buddy boost is concerned, you have your best buddy boosted. You know you're going to put it. You really love your Lunala, or it's ideally the thing that you want to put your boost on. If you know you're going to apply the boost in the first place, the minimum I would build is a 15, 13, 15. That also is kind of in range of a silver bottle cap. I believe those are going to increase just one stat, so it's buildable with the idea that you maybe bottle cap it later. 15 attacks still needed for those things that we want to maintain in the best buddy opposing mirrors, but you can drop to 14 if those don't matter as much to you, because the things lost are not critical, just completely outside of that mirror. There's really nothing that you give up that's as important, but I mean it, please build a 15 attack Lunala at least. 13 defense keeps the most important matchups intact, loses some meta relevant bulk points, but the outcomes of these matchups aren't affected, so it's not a must avoid situation. 15 HP does maintain the 2-to-2 shields against Solgaleo, which is a matchup that, again, because Lunala and Solgaleo have just been released into raids, they're going to be very popular. You can drop down to 12 HP if that matchup specifically does not bother you to be lost. So hopefully this helps, y'all. I'm going to be raiding hard for Lunala alongside most of you guys probably, because I don't have one that I really... Let me know in the comments if you've got any Pokemon, regardless of whether it's for Master League or any of the other leagues, that you'd like to see a breakdown on, and I'll do my best to try and get those out. I'm trying to do these a lot more often, at least one, maybe 2 a week if I can squeeze it. So let me know what you guys want to see next, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.